Good morning, and welcome to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I am located at 1563 Main Street in Peckville, and I'm here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. on these stations to provide you, the landowner, the information that you need regarding oil and gas development here in Pennsylvania. At the Clark Law Firm, I represent landowners and only landowners. Never have represented the pipe or gas line company, never will. Represent landowners for oil and gas leases, pipeline, water line agreements, royalty and royalty deduction issues, gas company, pipeline company disputes, estate planning issues, gas lease amendments, modifications, surface use agreements, well pad agreements, essentially any and all representation related to natural gas development in Pennsylvania. If you need representation, you can always contact me at 570-307-0702. That's 570-307-0702. And I just want to quickly say, distance. Sometimes when I talked to somebody this week and they were concerned, or they asked the question, they say, hey, I'm all the way out here. My property's in Washington County, which is down towards the southwestern portion of Pennsylvania. You're pretty far away. Do you see that as any obstacle? And let me say, distance from my office has never proven to be an obstacle yet. In fact, I talk about this sometimes. One of my clients who I represented, and things went very well, they actually were located in Micronesia. And quite frankly, I had to Google Micronesia to find out where it was. It's an island in the South Pacific. So I have had clients in London, Canada, Alaska, many in Texas and California, all across the country, and certainly all across Pennsylvania and in other places in the world, London and elsewhere outside of even the United States. So very rarely, actually in my experience, distance has never yet proven to be an issue, and if it ever was, we certainly would address it and make other accommodations. So I guess the point is if you're out there and you're listening, whether you're listening through the website at pagasleaseattorney.com, whether you're listening in any of the stations we're broadcasting in all across northeastern Pennsylvania and north central, don't be afraid of distance. Don't let that deter you or stop you or make you hesitate before calling the office. Give us a call. See if we're right for you. 570-307-0702. 570-307-0702. Give us a call. You like what you hear? Great. If you don't like what you hear, that's okay too. Not any lawyer is right for everybody. So I say this, we want to make sure that you're comfortable. Want to make sure that you're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for you. And we want to make sure that you're getting the best possible representation for you. So if there's somebody else who's going to be better for you, then I want you to be with that person. But if I'm going to be somebody who can be the best for you and I know what I can do and I know the effort that I'll put in, then I want to represent you. I want to assist you. I want to work for you. Now, I don't want to make this a big commercial, but I do want to get that out there because I really don't want people to say, hey, you know what? I like the way this guy sounds. I like the things he's saying. Hopefully you say, well, it sounds like he knows what he's doing. I think he could help me, but he's pretty far away. So that may be a problem. Look, don't be afraid of that. Give us a call, see what you think, and see if we can help you out. I have many clients: Armstrong County, Washington, Greene, Allegheny, Westmoreland, and we have clients all across the state, across the Northeast, North Central, anywhere where gas is being produced or to be produced or is probably going to be produced. Yeah, I think we've represented people in that area. So please don't be afraid of that. Okay, I'm going to tell you, I'm excited about today's show. Because I'm going to talk about these interstate pipeline projects. I am representing many landowners who are faced with the idea of a pipeline is going to be placed or an easement on their property that in most cases the people don't want. They absolutely do not want a pipeline easement. It's not about wanting more money. It's about, I don't want a pipeline easement on my property because I don't want to have that impact and damage to my property. However, in these interstate pipeline projects, ultimately, many of these landowners are not going to have a choice because, and I want to limit this so much, so please stick with me here. I want to make sure that you know that we're talking here about interstate pipeline projects, going from one state to another and potentially over other states and so on. Interstate pipeline, from state to state, major pipeline projects. They are handled, the jurisdiction for these interstate pipeline projects is by FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC. FERC. They regulate interstate pipelines. Very, very critical that I make sure that everyone understands we are talking about interstate pipelines, not whenever the landman is coming to give you a pipeline agreement or trying to get you to sign a pipeline agreement that's going to carry gas from your region to the interstate pipeline. We're talking about these major projects that are going miles and miles across Pennsylvania to New York, to Virginia, to Delaware, to New Jersey, so on and so on and so on. We're talking about major pipeline projects. So one of the things that we must identify, and I'm going to tell you, it's pretty darn simple. An initial thing that we must identify is, are you or were you approached for a pipeline project that is an interstate pipeline project, or is it a pipeline project that is more local or regional, which is going to carry gas from local wells or wells within your region to a junction point where that gas is then going to be placed into an interstate pipeline system? So huge difference here. Very, very important. Again, very easy to determine, but we must determine this first thing because if it is an interstate pipeline project, there is a very strong chance that the company who's presenting this interstate pipeline project right-of-way agreement to you, the landowner, will ultimately obtain the eminent domain power or authority to, and then have condemnation to take your property. To, even though you don't want this pipeline right-of-way agreement or easement on your property, pipeline right-of-way, the company can get eminent domain authority through an application process with FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and you could not sign any document and the company would get the power to take that area of your property over your objection. So we need to identify whether that's something that can occur. Now, if you listen to anything, well, listen to everything, please. But if you're going to listen to something even more intently, listen to what I'm about to say. The vast majority of pipeline projects, pipeline right-of-way agreements that are presented to landowners, do not in any way involve the possibility of eminent domain and condemnation. The vast majority do not. However, you as a landowner must identify immediately or very soon in this process whether the project that you're presented with, whether the agreement that is presented to you, does that agreement involve an interstate pipeline project? Does it involve a local project? Is there the potential for eminent domain and condemnation to apply? Now, there's also a state process, but I'm not going to talk about that today. But I want to focus on the keys to understand, is this going to be an agreement or an easement that the company, if I don't assign, would ultimately be able to get eminent domain authority and install this pipeline in the easement area if I do not agree? Absolutely critical. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. Here every Sunday, 8 to 9 a.m. We're talking about interstate pipeline projects, but what I'm really focusing on is the importance immediately to understand, is the project that you're being presented with, the company landman comes out and says, hey, we want to get an easement over this property. Does that easement agreement, if you do not agree to it, can the company ultimately get eminent domain and take or condemn your property over your objection? Again, it is very rare that that can occur. However, in certain cases it can. And because of the need and the desire of these companies, gas companies, to obtain higher prices, gas is saturated here in Pennsylvania, they want to get higher prices. So what do? Pipeline companies come up. There are several interstate pipeline projects now that are on the books here and being presented in Pennsylvania. So what happens is we need to identify, for example, the Atlantic Sunrise Project, the Penn East Project. You got to look at Mariner projects. And again, I'm not going to focus on that one today. But we need to look at, is this project, is it a FERC project, or is it a project that you would never need to ever be concerned about the potential of eminent domain? Now, with that said, I really want to stress, I don't care if it's a FERC project, it's a local project, just because the company may have the ability in the future to get eminent domain, that is not the end of this by any means. I want to stress, I'm going to jump off track here a little bit, but staying on track too. If you're a listener, you know that a couple things. We just re-released all new revamped pipelineattorney.com website. Very excited about it. If you have never been to pipelineattorney.com, go check it out, whether you need representation or not. A lot of really good information, educational materials out there. Check out pipelineattorney.com. If you have visited pipelineattorney.com in the past, go back and visit it again, because I'm going to tell you, we liked it before, but now I think it's considerably better, a lot more information out there, and I think you're going to be really happy and pleased with the changes. And we've got a lot of great feedback. Again, we just came back out, reworked everything, and just released it again within the last couple weeks or so. So go check out pipelineattorney.com. Well, one of the reasons why I'm saying that is I just posted up a blog here this past week, and it's entitled, it's on the pipelineattorney.com website, but the blog is called FERC Interstate Pipelines, Negotiating Pipeline Right-of-Way Agreements with the Threat of Eminent Domain and Condemnation. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this article some, or this blog that I wrote, but I really encourage you, go check out pipelineattorney.com, writing blogs there. There's a few of them posted up there now. You can also read blogs at pagасleaseattorney.com. But I'm going to talk about these FERC pipelines, and it's very important. We need to make these distinctions. I need to make sure that you understand these distinctions, because this is very important for everybody. Too many people think that eminent domain may apply and it has no chance in the world of applying. And then too many other people think, well, eminent domain is going to apply, and they may be accurate that it's probably going to apply, and they throw up their hands and they give up. That's not what you do. That's not what you do. And I'm going to explain all of this. We'll be right back. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I am here in these stations every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m., and I'm going to be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. A reminder, I'm here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. However, if you miss any of today's show, or if you want to go back, we just hit the 5-year anniversary for doing All Things Marcellus. 5 years. Go check out pagasleaseattorney.com. We'll have today's show up tomorrow morning. We have many, many hours of radio shows archived at pagasleaseattorney.com. Also, like I said, check out pipelineattorney.com. We have renovated, totally new, both websites earlier this year, pagasleaseattorney.com. We reworked and revamped everything. To me, it is considerably better. We thought it was good before. It's even better today. So if you haven't visited lately, check it out. And pipelineattorney.com. Check it out. Totally revamped. And that we just released a whole new website here in the last couple weeks. So make sure you go visit pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com. And if you need representation, you can always contact me at 570-307-0702. Now, I'm doing something a little bit different here today. I say the radio show a lot of times is like therapy for me. Things happen during the week. I just go and it drives me crazy. So it's nice to talk about and sometimes vent and get things out there. And I've been doing some more blogging, writing articles. And, I guess we'll call it blogs, but, sometimes there's kind of like articles that I want to put out there to educate people. Now, sometimes, and I'm a believer in this, I try not to make the show a commercial. You hear me say that all the time. Maybe you disagree. I can tell you I try not to. I try to get good information out there, and I try to do the same with the websites. But certainly, there's an aspect that's how I make my living, representing landowners. So if I can represent you and I can help you, that's wonderful. If you learn something from the sites or you learn something from the show, that's great too. We want to make sure that everybody on our side of the fence is doing better. It kills me because I said that and instantly my thought came, oh boy, I bet you those gas companies are saying, what do you mean our side of the fence? This is a partnership. Yeah, well, it's a partnership whenever it serves them well. That's when it's a partnership. It's a partnership when they want you to sign agreements. When you have a problem, you have an issue, it's not so much a partnership. So in any event, check out the sites. But what I want to talk about today is pipelineattorney.com. I just did a new blog, and there are many landowners now who are faced with pipeline requests. And one of the critical points is, and I talked about this first segment, you need to understand whether that request involves a pipeline project that may ultimately give the company authority through FERC, and we're going to talk about that today, FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. Is this a type of pipeline project that you're being presented with that the company will ultimately get eminent domain authority, or may get it, or probably get it? You need to understand that. But you also need to understand that the vast majority of pipeline right-of-way agreements, I repeat this, the vast majority, eminent domain condemnation is not remotely a factor, will never occur. You need to understand that. And too many people think, well, company's going to get eminent domain, so I might as well do an agreement. Well, in most cases, that's just simply not true. And interstate pipeline projects, they are major projects. So it's really easy to determine, is this an interstate pipeline project? Did the company apply to FERC, or are they going to apply to FERC to get approval and to get eminent domain? We need to understand that early on, and thankfully, it's very simple. So I talk to people still, even on these other agreements where eminent domain is not remotely even something that should be considered by them because it's never a factor, still thinking that the company may have eminent domain authority or get eminent domain authority in the future. We need to identify that. Please, you need to identify that right away. So I've done this blog here on pipelineattorney.com called FERC Interstate Pipelines, Negotiating Pipeline Right-of-Way Agreements with the Threat of Eminent Domain and Condemnation. So what do we have there? Another critical part. And I do these blogs, like I say, to try to get education to people. This one, and as I'll talk through it, one of the things that I found, I represent several people now with interstate pipeline projects where the company has applied to FERC, and FERC, again, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, they regulate interstate pipelines. Company applies to them. There's this application process. They apply to FERC. FERC reviews, there's a lot of different stages, and I want to focus on this today. But generally, when you're involved in one of these projects, generally speaking, on the negative side, they're usually approved where FERC gives them their approvals, and then the company does obtain eminent domain and condemnation authority. However, this is a process, and you as a landowner must understand the process if you're presented with a pipeline right-of-way agreement where the company has or will apply to FERC for approval of the project. You have to understand that. Well, what happens is people don't understand it. They rely on the landman, and that's a major mistake. I am Attorney Doug Clark. You're listening to All Things Marcellus here every Sunday on these stations from 8 to 9 a.m. And if you miss any of today's show, go check out pagasleaseattorney.com, pipelineattorney.com. We'll have the show up and available as well. And then, again, I'm going to highlight some of these items from this blog, but go check out pipelineattorney.com, go to the blog section, and check out the section regarding FERC interstate pipelines. I also have another section on the website regarding FERC lines, so we want to make sure that you're getting educated and you have a better understanding of what's going on. So anyway, so what do we have here? Pennsylvania, a lot of gas, more gas coming. Prices in Pennsylvania, gas prices everywhere are low. Pennsylvania especially low. The market is saturated with gas. So, of course, what does that do? Necessity, capitalism, motivation of higher profits. Companies are looking to move the gas where the supply is plenty to areas where the supply isn't so plentiful and where there's greater demand. So what are we seeing? We're starting to see some more, and we have seen some more of these interstate pipeline projects pop up. For example, in the northeastern part of the state, there's the Atlantic Sunrise, you have the Penn East. We're seeing some Tennessee gas line activity with the FERC pipeline projects. So there's some more of these popping up. But again, you as a landowner must identify what type of agreement you're being presented. Is it an interstate pipeline agreement, or is it the much more common type of pipeline agreement where a company is looking to transport the gas from wells in your area or region to existing interstate pipelines, which are going to move it to distant markets, or pipeline projects that are in the works now? So again, the most common type of agreement by far does not involve eminent domain and condemnation. Most agreements do not. However, some do, and you need to identify which type of agreement you have been presented with. You need to identify that because it can be a very big difference in how things move going forward. So you have to do that. And again, it's easy. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm, here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. All right, so we have all this gas in Pennsylvania. We need to get it out. The companies need to get it out to distant markets to get better prices. So we're seeing more of these interstate pipeline projects pop up, spring up because they want to move the gas. So what happens is, landowners, number one, like I said, you have to understand if you are in an interstate pipeline project and whether eminent domain and condemnation may ever be a factor. And I'll tell you this, if you're thinking that eminent domain and condemnation may be a factor in what's going on with the project or the offer that you receive, you better be right. You need to know that, because if you're wrong, you're almost, in my mind, guaranteed going to short sell yourself on compensation and property protection terms. So let's walk through this process. All right, so normally when a landowner is presented with an interstate pipeline project, when they're told, hey, landman knocks on the door, says, we want you to sign this pipeline right-of-way agreement. We're putting a major interstate pipeline through the area that's going to go through Pennsylvania and travel into other states. And by the way, we're going to be applying, if we haven't already, to FERC for approval, which will give us eminent domain authority. So if you don't want to sign this agreement, or if you don't want to sign a pipeline agreement, or you don't want it, well, most likely you're not going to have a choice, because we're going to get eminent domain as a pipeline company, and we will take your property anyway. Well, imagine that. All of a sudden you're sitting there, knock on the door, and this information is given to you. Generally speaking, that's a pretty bad day. Most people don't like that. I wouldn't like that. In most of my clients, rarely, like maybe, I don't even know if 1 in 10 ever say, oh, wow, that's a great news, because I'll get a few dollars. So when that occurs, the first thing, in my opinion, you need to do is take some steps back. Take the paperwork, take the information that was provided to you, and start getting educated. Get information. Start doing some more research online as a basic starting point. Step back, because what happens is landowners don't understand. Very few even know what FERC is, understand the application process, understand how eminent domain may apply, how condemnation may apply. And what happens is the landman is going to present this in a way that's going to be beneficial to the company. Of course they are. Why, everyone? Because the landman works for the company, not you, the landowner. So when you're presented with a FERC type of project, you need to step back and say, okay, it makes common sense. What does this even mean? What can I do? How long is this process going to take? Can I negotiate? What can I negotiate? Where is this in the process? Well, if I sign a right-of-way agreement and the company actually ends up not getting eminent domain authority, well, what does that mean? There are a lot of things that you need to look at, but with everything, you need to become educated and understand your rights. So when you're presented with an agreement, do not simply say, oh boy, there's a FERC pipeline right-of-way agreement. They're going to get approval and eminent domain. Well, I might as well just go ahead and sign, and here's the end of it. You can't do that. Please don't do that. And like I touched on before, never, ever sign an agreement because you think a company is going to have eminent domain authority, but you don't know with 100% certainty it's that type of an agreement. What I mean by that is I still talk to landowners all the time that say, oh, well, they're going to be able to just do this anyway, even if I don't sign. Is that correct? Well, with regard to eminent domain and condemnation, more than 9 out of 10, way more than 9 out of 10, way more. The answer is no. No, they can't. They're not ever going to get eminent domain and condemnation authority, which is why we need to identify that. So when I get back, I'm going to talk more. Again, I really go into this in the blog and the pipeline site. It's called FERC Interstate Pipelines, Negotiating Pipeline Right-of-Way Agreements with the Threat of Eminent Domain and Condemnation. If you go to pipelineattorney.com, you can read this blog in detail. I'm going to talk more about this. I'm going to talk about what I've been finding to be very helpful to clients, and we're going to get into that right after this break. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark, here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m., and I'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm, here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. on these stations. We just hit our 5-year anniversary. Just hit last week, 5 years I've been doing All Things Marcellus, and we're going to continue, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to continue, and again, I keep stressing it because we got such outstanding feedback from the websites, and talking today about my FERC blog that I just put on the pipeline site, pipelineattorney.com. Go check it out. You can read more in detail. I have another section on the site about FERC lines, and I want to stress, again, this is a small group of landowners, but it's it's small relative to landowners who are approached for the more standard pipeline agreements. But there are many, many people who are within these paths of these FERC pipeline projects. So I have many clients on these projects that we're working with, and we've come up with the various strategies, techniques, using experience to say, how do we make the best out of these circumstances? And one of the things I want to focus on, and I do all the time, the value of good information from your perspective, somebody who's working or helping you. So I don't care if it's a regular pipeline agreement. I don't care if it's a FERC pipeline agreement. I don't care what it is. I don't care what type of agreement it is. You cannot rely on the landman who works for the company to tell you or advise you and give you your options and your rights. Please, you can't do that. They work for the other side in this process. And despite what do they want to say? They want to say partnership, partnership, partnership. The reality is it's adversarial. Adversaries. You're trying to get the best that you can for you, your property that you own, that may have been in your family for generations. You want the best for you. What does the company want? The best for you? No, they want the best for them. What does the landman want to do? Well, the landman has a job. What's his job? To work for his or her employer. And in this case, he or she is employed by the pipeline company. So does it make sense that they're going to go out there and try to get you, the landowner, the best possible agreement? Of course, it does not make any sense at all, because it's simply not true. So when they say to you, well, I'm real landowner friendly, I'm all about the landowner, I own land, I've heard it all. Well, you know what you're about, which is fine. It's okay. Everybody has jobs. Well, hopefully everyone has jobs if you can have one, but their job is to do the best they can for their employer. And I respect that, recognize it, and that's fine. We need to do the same thing. We can't be fooled into thinking that this person at my table is here for me. No, they're there on behalf of the person, or the person, but the company that employs them. They are employed out there to get your signature. So does it make sense that you're going to listen to these people who tell you whatever, here's what your rights, here's what your options are? Does that make a lot of sense? To me, it does not. It doesn't at all. And my experience has been, in every case where I've talked to landowners, they certainly learned more, became more educated, understood their rights. And I can't make promises of results in any individual cases, but I can tell you, the clients tend to be pretty pleased in this process and saying, wow, I didn't know that. Didn't realize we could do these different things. You need, whether it's me or somebody else, you need to understand your rights, and you're not going to learn your rights and options from the pipeline company landman. You're not going to learn your rights and options from them. If you take what they say is true, well, you're probably going to end up, in most cases, not doing nearly as well as you would have done if you understood your rights, if you learned of them independently, if you learned through somebody who was experienced and knowledgeable, who could help you out to explain what to do and explain your options. Very, very important. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm, here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. So I want to talk about, again, I'm talking about my blog here that I wrote on these FERC pipelines. What I've been doing, and I'm going to do this here. It'll be my little commercial alert because it's going to get a little commercial here for a second. But again, I'm going to say this. I'll do my commercial, but I'll say, look, whether it's me or somebody else, here's what I've found recently. Like I say, I have several clients, many clients. I'm not sure what the difference is in many and several, but I have, we'll say several, whatever we want to use. Let's use the smaller number. But I'm representing multiple people right now on FERC interstate pipeline projects. And what I've found is, and this is not, doing Atlantic Sunrise in Tennessee and some others, but I've done others in the past, the Mark I, Constitution projects. And what we do, obviously, we're always learning. We're always having new experiences and gaining knowledge from our prior experiences, having new experiences every day and learning from them to say, what can we do to make things better? What can we do to make the best next case better than this case? No matter how good the result was in the prior case, what can we do to make it better? So what have I found? I have found that something that's working very well with these newer interstate pipeline projects is we've been scheduling these initial consultations and conferences with the landowners. And they can certainly be in office, but the majority of them have been by telephone. And here's what I found. What I think is critical in these, and this is, again, based on years of experience in doing this and continuing to represent landowners in these FERC pipeline projects, what I found is that there's so much confusion when the landowner is presented with this agreement. Again, the landman tells them what the landman wants to tell them. The landowner is intimidated, they're concerned, they're confused, they feel helpless, it's a bad time for them. So one thing that I've learned, very important, get a consultation with somebody, at least an initial consultation, to understand, okay, well, what's going on here? What do I have? Where is this in the process? How long does this FERC process take? Has the company applied to FERC? What's the likelihood that the company could get eminent domain in the future? And again, I want to keep stressing this. Just because a company, even if they've applied to FERC and can get eminent domain, does not mean that you're out of options by any means. So you need to learn that. What is this process? You need to become familiar with what your rights are, what your options are. In my experience, after that initial consultation, look, if you don't want this pipeline, you don't want the pipeline. If it's going to occur, you're never going to be happy. But you're going to understand what your rights are, and you're going to do the best that you can in this unwanted situation. So you don't want the situation, But does that mean you should make it worse? No, you want to make it better. So something that I found is clients will call or landowners call, say, I got this interstate pipeline project, and maybe you don't even know what it is at first. You say, I got this right-of-way offer. We do an intake here and say, this will be a good case to have an initial consultation, learn what your rights are, what to expect. Then, if you want to go further, you can go further, but you certainly don't have to. But get an idea of what you're facing here. And in a lot of cases, what we do is we formulate an overall strategy of how you want to handle this going forward. In a lot of cases, I'll become involved and stay involved. In some cases, we do a consultation and that's it. But you need to understand what these rights are early in the process. Become educated and get a plan together of how you're going to handle this. Do not simply just throw your hands in the air and say, well, it's going to happen anyway, I might as well sign. One of the things I did in the blog was there's a section, and this blog is like 3 pages, so I encourage you, go check it out. But one of the parts I have here is under a heading of never just give up. Do not fall into the company trap. Formulate a negotiation strategy. Very, very important. And I go through a list of things that landowners will say, which we don't want you to say these things and take this position. So when you're contacted, get initial consultation, learn your rights, understand your options. Commercial alert. You can call me 570-307-0702. 570-307-0702. If you don't call me, call somebody. But don't rely on the company landman to act as your advocate. They are an advocate for the company. I talked before, this is an adversarial situation, not a partnership, as are almost all of these type of agreements, whether it be a gas lease, pipeline, I don't care. The company wants to say partnership. That means partnership. So here, as you're part of the partnership, you sign a bad agreement. Our part will sign a good agreement. That's not what we want to do. We want to have you as the landowner sign the best possible agreement. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm, here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. on these stations. So, okay, some items. We do not want you as a landowner to say any of these following things. For example, the pipeline company is going to take the easement anyway through eminent domain, so I might as well sign the pipeline agreement they're offering and just get what I can. Don't say that. That's not that's not the attitude that you should have. You're going to sign a bad agreement if you take that attitude. Also, don't want to say there's no need to contact a lawyer because a lawyer cannot do anything for me since the pipeline company will ultimately have eminent domain and condemnation through FERC. So no need to get an attorney. Again, that initial consultation, if you feel that way, have a consultation, learn your rights, and then decide, do I want to go further? To me, it's a small investment, and all my clients so far have been very pleased, but who knows? Maybe the next person won't, but so far this has worked very, very well for people. We don't want you to say, my neighbors have signed, so I might as well sign too, because I can't get better terms or money than my neighbors. Again, simply not true. Don't say that. Don't take that position. Don't say, I don't want to get into a fight with the gas company or pipeline company or very large. I don't want to go to court to challenge condemnation or eminent domain, so I might as well just sign and get it over with. Think about that. I might as well just sign and get it over with. Boy, talk about music to a company's ears. You have a landowner or you have groups of landowners saying, I'm helpless, I might as well just sign. Don't do that because you are not helpless. You are not helpless in this circumstance. We don't want you to say, well, the pipeline company will have eminent domain through FERC, so any attorney or lawyer is not going to be able to help me, and it'll just cost me money. I'm only going to get so much money from the pipeline company, so I don't want to spend that money on an attorney because they're not going to do anything for me anyway. Well, I understand that. I truly understand where people may think those things. However, in my experience, it's just generally not true because early on, if nothing else, having a consultation, understanding, learning your rights, companies recognize that landowners take these positions. They understand that landowners can think this way. This is not their first rodeos. They understand. So what do? They make their offers in a way to take advantage of that mentality. So generally speaking, I have not seen yet where a pipeline company in a FERC project has presented the landowner with their first offer and that be their best offer. Now, maybe it starts tomorrow, but I have never seen that. Why? I believe in part because companies know that many landowners are just going to sign because they feel helpless. They feel an attorney can't help them. They feel eminent domain is going to happen anyway. Their neighbors sign. Because your neighbor made a stupid decision doesn't mean that you should make a stupid decision too. Doesn't mean it. I mean, we all tell our kids, and we were told as kids, driving us crazy. Just because so-and-so jumped off the bridge doesn't mean you jump off the bridge too. You know, there's truth to it. You can't do those same things with pipelines. So companies come out, they know what you think, and they say, well, we're going to give them low offers. A lot of people are going to just feel helpless, throw up their hands, and start signing papers. You don't want to be in that group. If others are going to be in that group, they're going to be in that group. We don't want it to be you. Way over here, going into my last segment, we're going to finish up on this. Don't leave me. 8 to 9 a.m. every Sunday in these stations. You're listening to All Things Marcellus with Attorney Doug Clark. I'll be right back. Welcome back to All Things Marcellus with me, Attorney Doug Clark of the Clark Law Firm. I am here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. on these stations. And if you miss any of today's show, I've been doing the show now over 5 years. Over 5 years I've been doing All Things Marcellus. Go to pagasleysattorney.com. pipelineattorney.com. You can listen to archive shows and get a lot of great information. Talking about a blog that's up now on pipelineattorney.com regarding FERC or interstate pipeline projects. I want to just touch on again, it's so darned important. Please know that the vast majority of pipeline agreements and agreements that are presented to landowners do not involve the potential of eminent domain and condemnation. The vast majority do not. However, some do. So we need to identify that group. I am representing many landowners right now on a Tennessee project that looks to involve FERC, on the Atlantic Sunrise, Penn East, other projects out there that have the potential of eminent domain. We need to identify that. Like I said, when a landman comes out there, and this applies, I don't care what the agreement is, you should have a consultation to say, okay, do I even want to consider this? What is my leverage opportunity here? Do I want to negotiate? Do I want to politely decline? All right, well, eminent domain may come into play. Not happy about that. That's not a good situation. However, let's make the best of this unwanted situation. I went through the last segment, several different things that we don't want you as a landowner to say. Boiled down, we don't want you to say, well, the company has eminent domain authority or will get eminent domain authority, so I might as well sign. Or company has eminent domain authority. What good's a lawyer going to do except take some of the money that the company is going to offer me? Where's the pen? Let me sign. Well, the landman tells me, a lawyer isn't going to be able to do anything for you. We get eminent domain authority. Please remember the landman works for the company. If you think those things, well, then take some time and have an initial consultation. Have a consultation to understand your rights and understand your options. And if you feel that way afterwards, then go ahead and sign. But I have found for landowners that are presented with pipeline right-of-way agreements for interstate pipelines, and all others, but we're talking about interstate pipeline projects, consultation has been tremendously valuable. Many landowners who are going to sign after a consultation haven't signed or decide not to sign in their case specifically, and resulted in many cases thousands and tens of thousands of more dollars. So at least have this consultation, because it may change entirely how you think. I'm going to give you my information, but if it's not with me, make sure it's with somebody who understands and knows and who's experienced, who can try to help guide you. You can contact my office at 570-307-0702, 570-307-0702. But I don't want this to be a big, giant commercial. But at the same time, these consultations have proven to be very, very valuable for many landowners. And we want you to be informed and get information. And I'll guarantee you, you'll hear things from me you're not going to hear from the pipeline company landman. Why? Because the pipeline company landman works for the pipeline company, and I work for you, the landowner. I am Attorney Doug Clark. You're listening to All Things Marcellus here every Sunday from 8 to 9 on these stations. So I want to talk more then. So, okay, talking about the blog on pipelineattorney.com. One of the other headings I have, I'm very excited about this one. Thought this was pretty bright of me. Say, pipeline companies are smart. Landowners must be smarter. Pipeline companies are smart. We need to be smarter. They've been doing this for a very long time. We need to recognize that. We need to study what they do. We need to say, what are our options? What do we need to do? And what flexibility do we have? We need to know our limitations. Look, this isn't all wonderful. We need to know our limitations. It's an unwanted situation. What can we do about it? I tell landowners early on in the process, look, I don't think that you're going to walk away from this ever being happy that this whole process just occurred. However, you're going to do the best you can. You're going to understand what your own specific risk tolerance is, how far you want to push things. You're going to do this, and at the end of this process, when you go to bed at night, you're going to know that you were informed, you were educated, and you did the best you could for your circumstance, as opposed to, oh, okay, company land guy, he seems pretty nice guy. Well, you're going to get eminent domain anyway. Where do I sign? Do not do that. Do not do that. If you have a consultation, if you learn your rights and then you decide to do it, well, that makes more sense. I haven't generally seen that, but at least you're informed and you're making a wise and smart decision. So the companies are smart. We need you on the landowner side and our side. We need to be smarter. We need to recognize this. We need to see this, and we need to make sure that you're educated and we negotiate the best agreement possible for you. And and I'm not going to say, because I know we get pipeline people listening to the show, I'm going to give out all my little recommendations from my side, but I want to tell you, we need to be smarter. And you can call me 570-307-0702. And look, if you're not going to call me, go to pipelineattorney.com, read the article, read the FERC other sections, read other sections of the pipeline site, and become educated and informed. I would highly recommend, and I mean this with all the sincerity that I can state, I would highly recommend anyone who's presented with the FERC Interstate Pipeline Project to have an initial consultation with myself. You can do somebody or have it with someone else. I don't know what other people say or what other people do. I know what I do, and I believe that every consultation that I've had so far with any of these landowners has been very, very valuable. And I say that because they've told me so time and time again. So you can contact me, 570-307-0702. So going on then. So what we do too, so I have this consultation. We want to make sure you understand your rights. We understand your options. But we want to also, normally what we do then is we develop a comprehensive strategy. How do you want to move forward? Now that you understand what your rights are, now that you understand how this application process works, now that you understand what type of time frames that you're probably going to be looking at, let's formulate a plan. How do you want to handle this? Do you want me or an attorney to be involved in a more regular basis? Do you want to have the negotiations or the discussions with the company yourself? How do you want to handle it? What are the benefits of each one? What are the detriments of each one? You decide. The great thing about a consultation, and even if you hired an attorney, whether it be myself or someone else, you can generally fire them. But with a consultation, you're only committing to say, okay, let's have a consultation. Let's talk about this. I do the vast majority of these consultations by telephone. Landowner sends me the information. Usually I'm pretty familiar with it because I've dealt with it before. So we're not reinventing the wheel. I don't sit there and say, okay, well, it's going to require all this time for me to review the agreement. Generally speaking, I've already reviewed the agreement many, many times, so we can really dive into the issues in your particular case. So we can talk about the education of your rights, the knowledge of what your options are. Then then we can say, okay, how do you want to move forward? And look, sometimes I get clients where it's a hunting property, the right-of-way is in the complete back area of the property that the people have never even gone to. And other times I have it where it's the client's front yard and they have half an acre property. You need to look at your circumstance. I said it before. I have these themes. I say time and time again, landman works for the company. I can't say it enough, and I'm committed to say it at least once every show. Also, just because your neighbor signed a bad agreement doesn't mean you need or should sign a bad agreement. So, landman comes out with a FERC interstate pipeline project, gets your neighbors to sign, comes to you and say, oh, well, your neighbors signed. That is irrelevant to me. That is entirely 100% irrelevant to me because everybody's in a different circumstance. And just because they did something that was a foolish move in their case or in that situation doesn't mean that I need to do the same thing. I'm not jumping off the bridge because everybody else did or because one other person did. But we're going to look at this, and if the time is right and the deal is right and the terms are right and it makes sense to sign, then we're going to say, okay, I'm comfortable moving forward. I've looked at the positives. I've looked at the negatives. I've studied my offer. I'm aware of other offers locally and in the region. And that's a good thing too. You have an attorney who is representing more people on a project, understands what the offers are, and is looking to make sure that they're doing the best for each and every client. So you're going to get some other information. You as a landowner, what are you getting? You're getting what the landman tells you. You're getting maybe what your neighbors tell you. You're getting something that you might be reading online. Listen, think about this. There may be landmen and company representatives out there writing on these message boards. Think about that. Who's giving you this advice? What advice are you taking? What advice are you taking, but where are you taking it from? What's the agenda of the person who's offering this advice? So you're really in a vacuum compared to saying, okay, well, here's what we've seen in other projects. Here's what we've seen in other projects in this company. Here's what we've seen this company offer other landowners in your region. Here's what we've seen as landowners who have done better and how they've done better. All of these things come into play and things that you need to look at to get you the best possible number and the best possible property protection terms. And I want to remind everybody, I touched on it before. Think about this. Companies know that when landowners are giving offers, and those offers may involve or will probably involve a project that will ultimately obtain eminent domain authority, many landowners become instantly intimidated, feel they can't do any better, and they sign agreements. I have not yet seen a company present their best offer as a first offer in a FERC pipeline project. Now, maybe it may start tomorrow. Maybe it's happened all the time, but none of those people have contacted me. But I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it. And I think that it's probably, as it makes sense, very, very rare. Domino effect. They present these lowest offers as a first offer. Your neighbor signs, your other neighbor sign, because they say, what's an attorney going to do? They're going to get eminent domain anyway. Might as well just go ahead and sign this thing. I'm not going to fight the pipeline company. They sign. So what happens now? That's ammunition for the landman to come to you and say, oh, your neighbor signed. And then, hey, if that's a big acre landowner, they'll be pointing out, oh, yeah, Farmer Clark signed. He has a bunch of acreage. Or, oh, this guy signed. He's a business owner. Whatever they can do to motivate you to sign. We need to be better than that. We need to understand. You need to understand your rights. So I'm going to close it with this and say, look, I try not to be too commercial, but I'm going to just go ahead. I'll do my last part as my commercial. If you are presented with a FERC pipeline right-of-way agreement that involves an interstate pipeline project, call my office, Clark Law Firm, 570-307-0702, 570-307-0702. Get an initial consultation. It'll be well worth the investment. Initial consultation. If you want to go further, you can. No obligation. You're listening to All Things Marcellus. I'm here every Sunday from 8 to 9 a.m. Have a great week, everyone. See you next week.